Bonjour and good day, everyone. Welcome once again to this channel. And today, what we have for you is a little to-do application showcasing the use of React hooks, uh, and then a little server, mockup server to store our data, which will be retrieving and displaying the table as seen. We also have a few functionalities of we have edit, we have delete, and we have add to do. So before we begin, if you are coming from a class component approach where we use this.state and then this.setState and React class components, and then you want to migrate to using hooks, which was introduced in React 16, I think you can visit the React site, which does a good work of introducing you to the various hooks and how to implement them. And having a little understanding or fair enough understanding, you can follow this tutorial. So we'll demonstrate this application before we get down to the nitty-gritty stuff of showing the dependencies we use in this application. So first of all, we add a to-do. So you can see a whole lot of IRNs, books, or how do you call it? His works. I'm a big fan of IRN, so you can also check it up and see what she talks about, philosophy and all those stuff. I think they are quite interesting when you do read it. So that was just by the way. So I've added philosophy. Who needs it by Aaron? I'm going to edit it, and this time it's by Matt Cogner. So it means I'm there. So we have it shown here, and then we can also check our endpoint, our mocked up endpoint, to see whether our data is persisted. So we can see philosophy who needs it. So that's also here. We can also delete it, and then it's gone. So we can check our endpoint, then it's also gone. So that's the whole overview of what we'll be demonstrating in this application, and we'll be using mainly React hooks. So before we continue, we introduce you to a little bit of introduction on what we are going to need to understand before we start this project. So we are using a mockup server API endpoint. So instead of using Node.js or Spring Boot or Spring Python, any of the programming languages which can aid in backend development to consume APIs, we are using a mockup server, which is JSON server, as you can see on npm. So it says get a full fake REST API and a whole lot of stuff. So you can also check it out in your spare time. So we are using a JSON server, and we also have another approach or another alternative, that is mock service worker. I've used both, but for this project, I'm going to use JSON server. The mock server has to do with the browser, so it intercepts the request in the browser using the service workers to act as a backend host, retrieving your endpoint and then performing the necessary modifications to your data as needed. So that's for you. That's the dependency we need. We also need React Bootstrap for the UI layout. We are going to use use or fetch, native browser fetch, for making requests to HTTP endpoints using HTTP verbs. As you know, or you can also get more insight into it, that we have the get, post, patch, delete, put, and a whole lot of them. We have the headers and those stuff, but those are when you want to create in-depth REST endpoint. Yeah. So sorry for that. Actually, the hooks we'll be using in this project are mainly centered upon useState, useEffect, useContext, and useReducers. So before I begin, I think to have a fair idea of what hooks are, or what the hooks, or what entails about the hooks we'll be using in this project are, will help us understand the project furthermore. If you're coming from a class component approach in React, you know that we did have the constructor, where we had a constructor where we also had super to inherit the props which will be passed to the component. Then we set the state, this is the state, and then within here we declare maybe data should go to an array, those kind of stuff. That was for the class component, but in React hooks we use useState. So with the useState, it returns an array, so we can say value set value, then set the initial state of this value. We'll initialize it here. As in when we create an object instance, example when you're in Java programming language, we set the instance, we set the initial value if the constructor. So this is acting as a kind of not a constructor, but we set the value of this in here. Okay, so we'll get down to it in sample coding. So we just need to get the overview on the theory of what it does. So it enables functional component to have state, retains an array of value, set value, where set value is a setter method to set the data in value. And then with useEffect, actually, when we are dealing with application, you're going to consume information from endpoints, different endpoints. Maybe it could be a music application where you're consuming from Spotify API or a sport application, getting data from a sport data API. So it could be any application that you wish to use, and depending on the API which is available, we're going to use useState for the lifecycle management. So if you're also coming from a class approach component in React, we did have the component did mount. So this is almost equivalent to that of useEffect here. So we also demonstrate it here. So when a component becomes is getting mounted, we will fetch our data from API endpoint and populate it in a relevant child component or utility component to display. It depends on how you are going to structure application. And then we also have useContext. When we are programming, we do have data that is shared by a whole lot of application states. So the useContext enables us to easily access application data and helps eliminate props drilling as the component scales and data is needed from container component to child component. So in React application, what you would do is mostly you will have a container component which handles the state, and you have the child component which renders content from parent component. So I think I read from Adam Bullock's React and React Native books, mostly when you're creating a React application and then breaking it down into individual reusable components. I think the maximum nests that we can have is probably three nested components isn't that bad. So we have the parent, the child, and the subchild. And it will depend on how you're going to structure your application. So that will depend on the team you are working with and what they require. And we also have use reducers. Sometimes in an application we can have so many set states, as in set states, so username, first name, age, those kind of stuffs. We can use useState to handle all those operations in a functional component. But when the state size increases very largely, I think the use reducers helps group them into a good coding approach or good software practice whereby the state is managed or handled in one component, so that if any error is thrown, we can just easily debug it. So that's what the use reducers does. So that's the general overview of what the project will entail, and I've also demonstrated what this application does. So stay tuned, and then let's continue if you are willing to have an insight to see the strength of hooks in React. Mind you, we can also use Redux for. So mind you, We can also use Redux for state management, but the only difference between the use reducers and Redux library is the Redux library is read-only, but with use reducers, we can update the state. It is not read-only. It isn't. It isn't read-only. So that's the only difference between the use reducers and then Redux library. And then Redux library also has a whole lot of creative functionalities for you, which helps make your coding easier. So let's continue. Okay, so to begin, we'll bootstrap our React application. npx create React app to do demo. But with a need to save time, I'll fast forward this so that we get down to the actual project. Okay. Okay. So after bootstrapping our React app, we can run npm start to verify if everything is intact. Then we get to demonstrate the hooks, the various hooks here using sample coding. Then we get into our to-do app. So this also takes quite a little time. I think I have to get myself a better machine sometime. Because I think it takes a little bit while to load. And I'll skip this part, I'll fast forward it. Then we get to our project. So the root of every React app is the index.js here, and this is a functional component app which has this HTML or not HTML, it's JSS, which is transpiled to JavaScript and then rendered on the browser. So let's see, our first hook will be useState. So let's change useState. So very slow. So I'll fast forward it. Okay, so we have the default code stub here which renders this. So I think we take that out. Then we'll demonstrate useState hook. An input text for which sets the name of a user. So we are going to use fragment. And you can read more on what fragment does. It helps eliminate errors which might occur in nesting the HTML tags. So we can use either react.fragment or use this opening and closing anchor braces. That looks simpler for me, so I'm used to that. But I can use react.fragment. So constant username, so set username, and we'll use it. So initially username is empty, or you have so we'll make it user so that I have a whole view of it. So my name is so username. So when it's rendered, my name is user, right? So now let's use the useState hook to change it, because this is a certain method which changes the value in username. So let's create an input type text value equal to username, and change, because we are going to type within the text field, and change the event which we type within it. So we set username target value. So I'm supposed to close it and close it. So that is it. So I rendered. We have my name is user. Now my name is Daniel. You can see the state is changed automatically. So that's the usage of use state hook. Okay, then we'll move on to our next hook. Okay, so our next hook that we see a sample code stub to see how it works is useEffect. But before that, let me refactor this so that our code becomes a little bit. This is inline. We are setting the value inline within the input, so we can write a method here, constant handle change username. We just want to this is inline. We change the value, or we call the setter method inline within the input, but I want to pass it to a function so that our code becomes a little bit clearer. But it's all both approaches work, both approaches. So it depends on how you want to structure your code. So all has to go down to text. So handle change username. So we'll have set username target value. So this input calls this function or method handle username. It passes the events, which will be, that is the test input change event, which will be typed within the test field. Then the E here is passed, that's the event handler, is passed to this method argument. Then we set the value, so we can check whether it works as in the previous example. Name is user Fred. So it's still the same, it works. All right, so let's move on. New, so we can name that app is useEffect demo.js. So I'm going to use ES's functional component. So app useEffect demo. Good. And then what we're doing is later I'm going to use useEffect. So let's assume we have a username and a user ID. So if you have a username and ID, it means you're going to have to use state. So constant username set username is equal to useState. So we can see that it's imported here by the ID, but if your ID doesn't support that, you're supposed to do that on your own. Constant user ID set user ID to useState. So initially I'm going to make this empty string and yeah, this is also empty. So what do? I'm going to return store using fragment. So my username is username, then my ID is ID. So let's see what is what you're going to render. I'm importing it into the JS. No more rendering up. So now rendering useEffect. So we have an error. ID. Okay, it's rather user ID. So let's see what we have. My username is empty, my ID is empty. So we're going to use useEffect hook, and useEffect has to deal with calling lifecycle methods or changing the lifecycle. So if you are fetching data from an API endpoint or something of that sort, that has to do with the lifecycle method. So let's mock our demo endpoint that we are fetching from. So we're just going to use promises here. So I can get user data or return a new promise, a promise result, then a result we will set timeout to maybe 2 seconds, then for return ID is equal to 1, 2, 3, then name is equal to Daniel. So to use useEffect here, we call the useEffect hook here, useEffect, and then this useEffect hook, we're going to call the async operation that is a promise here. So we get user data dot n user. Then we use the setters to set the values within the username so that it changes the value within this username, because for now it's empty. So we say set username user dot ID, because this user object is returned from this promise, and then we have an ID here, and also we have set user ID. Set username is equal to user dot name. Sorry for that. Set user ID will be user dot ID. So now it is what expected assignment to function call line 17. So get user dot then okay, let me catch the error and console log it so that I see where it's coming from. Console log error. I'm still having the error. Let's check it out. An assignment of function call instead of an expression. Assignment of function call instead of an expression. Okay. I think I'm supposed to because the curly braces need a return statement, but with the open bracket, it has a return inbuilt within it. So our username is, let's see whether after 2 seconds we are going to have our data populated. Oh, I think it's taking too long. Let me reduce it to okay, I think it was supposed to be resolved rather. Yeah. So my username after 2 seconds, Nathaniel123. So that is so we can see it is initial now, then it's populated. So that's the work of useEffect. So useEffect handles lifecycle events for us, and then we have more in-depth information on useEffect that you can read online to check, because when a component is unmounted, you are supposed to cancel the return promise operation, and we have to look more into it, but this is just for a demo on how useEffect works. So you can check on that also. Let's move on to our next rule, that is sharing data at this useContext. Okay, so I think we're done with our useEffect hook demo. We move on to useContext, that's accessing global data. So presumably we have a user name and user ID, which is rendered here. Then we would like to pass extra information to the user, but that's the global data. We don't want to have it in this useEffect container. We can maybe do that in index.js. So we can say constant order user data context is equal to create context. We'll have to export that because that is what is what will have our data within it that we can extract. So let's say constant order user attribute is equal to hobbies is to maybe again and then plain chess. Maybe last one, reading philosophy, reading books on philosophy. Whoa, come on. So we have the hobbies of the individual, and then we can have the maybe age, give the user an age of maybe 30. Yeah, that is too much. Give the user an age of 20. So what useEffect that useContext does is it wraps the component that is going to share the data with it. So that would be the parent component, and then the component that will be inheriting from it will be the child component. So we call it order user data context dot provider. So that's a provider, and then we wrap the app useEffect demo within it. So it means every data which will be present here can be accessed by app useEffect demo because this is now the parent, as the provider, and this is the child inheriting it. So it returns, it needs a value, a prop, a value prop. Then we pass other user attribute to it. Good. So now, if you want to access other user attribute, hobbies and age in use app useEffect demo, let's see that we can say okay, we import. So the value which has the context that we need to access is other user data in context. So we're going to import that into app useEffect. So we'll come here. Good. Other user effect, other user data context. So it is from /index.js, and then we'll consume it. So that's going to be other user data consumer. Consumer. Oh, come on. Okay, so Control-X. So that's the consumer. So now we can access the user hobby. You can access the user hobbies and the age. So let's see that. Since this is the consumer now, we can say value, then so have hobbies are value dot hobbies. We can map through it, but we just want to display it in a single line, and then also my age is h value dot h. So actually, we are supposed to group this. You can group this in another fragment or dive because it's returning more than two components. You know that React returns a single CSS component, and this value is returning more than one component P. So that's why we are grouping it in fragments. So let's see about that. Oh, we have an error. Let's inspect. Let's see. It said what? Render is not a function. And render is not a function. A consumer with isn't a function. A consumer with multiple children isn't a function. Okay. A consumer with multiple children. So this value. Wow. So what do we have? What do we have? What do we have? I think I can purely rendering the content of the consumer here. Good. So the problem was this was a fragment, then it returns its component here. Then we have a consumer which has a value prop that we want to render. So it's supposed to be in its own container, kind of its own stub, which returns the data it wants to return. It is not supposed to be part of this this component. So that's it. So this what a context that. So we have a data shared from we have the data shared from the upper index.js, that's the parent, which is rendered here, which can be accessed in the consumer, which is in app useEffect demo, which is the child. But this is cumbersome because you have to write other user context or consumer before we can access all this cool stuff. So we can use useContext to make that simpler, and that was the goal that we needed to do. useContext. So we say constant other user data equal to useContext. Then we call other user data context. You get it? So I'm commenting this out for maybe further verification analysis when you decide to pause the video and analyze it. So now I can say that my hobbies are other user data dot hobbies, because the data returned by the context is passed to the other user data, and then we access the object, which is dot hobbies and then h. So other user data dot hobbies, then my age is other user data dot age. So let's see about that. My age is 20. That's a fictional age, that's not my age. So by the way, so it's all rendered the same, but we can see that using useContext hook made the code simpler than using the consumer, then breaking it down using the value before rendering. There's a whole lot of code stuff. Just a single line here made the code cleaner. So that's the advantages of, or one of the advantages of using hooks, which makes our code even more clearer and simple to write. So we move on to our last hook, use reducers. Then we get to our to-do application. So if you get to understand all what you've done so far, then the to-do application will be a piece of cake, because the same logic and approach that we've used here is what you're going to inculcate into the whole application and then create our to-do application with a slight improvement of using the mock service HTTP endpoint. That is all. Okay, so let's move on to our last. Okay, so we've seen how the use context works. We're able to retrieve global state data from anywhere in our application. When the child values or child components inherits their context values from parent. So we move on to use reducers. That will be our final hook. And with use reducers, when our state becomes very large, use reducers helps group our state object into one function that we can track and debug easily. So let's see an example of how that works. Use reducers. Yes. So see a demo. Let's see why the error. Okay. Use reducers. Okay. So what the reducers does is we will have an initial state object. It could be an array, it could be a single object. But with this demo, this is a simple demo to give an insight and understanding of reducers. We are going to use a single object a counter, for example. I will say let count initial state. That will be a good name for it. So count is 0. So a reducer takes an action. A reducer takes an action and a state. It's a state and an action. So let me explain the Redux architecture or the Flask architecture a little so that we know what you're following. So what that is, we will have the view which will trigger an action, maybe from a button. The action has a payload, that is, the action has data which is sending to the action is being sent to the store, and then the store sends the data back to the view to update the view. So update view. So it kind of starts here and then count backs again to the view. So with the action, we dispatch the action from the view. So we dispatch an action. The action has a payload within it, which is sent to the store. The store perform its configurations or its modifications to it. Then it's sent back to the view to show to the user the new state change. So that's what the Flask architecture or the Redux architecture, that's how it works. But this time we're using use reducers hooks. So we also have a library called IMA. That is it, which when you are finding problem writing pure immutable code in JavaScript, you can use the IMA library to write mutable code. But IMA will handle the immutability behind the scenes for you, so you can check more on it. They have sample examples here to show you the slices and all those stuff. Because you can see we are using push, but we cannot use push in our approach. We are going to copy the object. So that is IMA for you. Check it out when you have the time. But let's continue with our demo. So we have an initial state. We have create a reducer. A reducer takes states and an action. So our constant count reducer will be equal to state and action. And then what a reducer does is it performs its operation within it. So we can use an if, else, or switch case. The one you are okay with, you can use. So we use switch action.type. Then the case, since this in this example we are using a counter kind of. We know that our cases can be increment, decrement, maybe reset. You can add a whole lot of it, a whole lot of functionality to it, but we are sticking to these three. So increment, this case increment, we will edit it as the code progresses. So case increment will have return count object. We're not going to say return count plus one. We are not going to say return count plus one, kind of, we are not mutating the object directly. So we say return the object but copy the state dot count plus one. So the object is at the left hand side and we are copying the state value which will return to count. That is with increment. We have case decrement or return count state dot count minus one. Then we can have our case maybe reset. That will be return count is equal to 0. Then we can have our default state. Default when an action pass does not conform to any action here, we just return the default state. So the state is mostly assigned the initial state. Good. So this is our reducer. So let's move on to, so we are done with our reducers. Let's move on to our main function. So we call, as we did for useState, we do the same for useReducer. Constant, we'll come back to this array. useReducer takes a reducer. As you can see, it is a reducer and an initializer. So our reducer is count reducers, and then our initializer is count initial state. So it returns an array of states in dispatch. So that is it. And we said, let me copy this here so that we know what we are going and following our approach. We said with the flash pattern, we have the view which dispatches an action to the store. So our store is kind of this reducer, and then send back to the view to update it. So now we've created our reducers. This is our use reducer. Let's return our count. So we still use our fragment. Okay. Current count value is state dot count. So we are accessing the count value from the state object because initial state object is passed to state, so it can access the count object within here. Or if you want it also, you can destructure it directly and just say count, so that you don't have to write state.count, but you just write count. Either way works. So let's see our two approaches. Start with our state so that we have a conformity before everything messes up. So this is state.count. Now we have to dispatch an action. So it means a button click or an event change to call up something so that we can pass that action to our store, that is this reducer, to perform the modifications for us and return it. So I have two buttons, maybe increase, let's add one to it, let's make this decrease, and then let's make the last one reset. Okay, so the button will have an on-click handler. So an on-click handler, and then the view has to dispatch an action. So we call the dispatch. So the action. What actions do we have? We can see that we have action.type, we have increment. So we just say type is equal to increment. It means when this button is clicked, this type increment is sent or is dispatched to our store, and this is our store now. So increment, it will return a new state count of what? +1. So let's run that. Then so when this button is clicked, it's supposed to render a p tag with increase, decrease, and reset buttons. So that when we do click on increase, this action type is dispatched to our store, kind of a small store, but this is not a store, a small store, and then it returns a count of state.count +1. So our count is supposed to increment +1. So let's see, let's import it. First, we're going to use that in index.js, and we are no more using our context, so I'm taking the whole of context off. Okay, so what do we have? Okay, so we have our current count value of 0. When you click 1, it does increase. Okay, so good. I think it's working. So we can do the same for decrease and reset, but I think we have to refactor our code to be a little bit standard, in the sense that we dispatch an action. So instead of writing barely always this raw code in here, we can make a mistake. Maybe we could make a mistake of writing increment or those kind of stuff. So we create action creators. So constant increment or increment counts, kind of a name for an action creator. As it's an action creator, we create action creators, increment count. Then that one definition is going to return type increment, so that whenever we call increment count function in a dispatch, we know that it's going to always return increment. So we have our code to return the types in a function that we can take care of. And we do likewise for the decrease and reset. So I can just copy this to make our coding faster. So decrement, return decrement, reset count, return reset. Okay, so here will also be like the reason why we have this empty opening and closing brackets is we don't want to automatically call our function when the page renders. You have to click the button before the dispatch event is sent. Otherwise, when you make it dispatch decrement count, it's going to throw an error because it's automatically called when the page renders. Yeah, we have an error. So that is it. Too many renders. Good. So we have to click the button before the dispatch event is sent. We do likewise for reset. Let me copy it to speed up our coding. Reset count. So we can see that we've modified it in the sense that now we have a view. This is our view because this is our UI, which dispatches an action. So we have actually an action creator, which returns an action with a payload. If there's a payload, it is sent to the store to perform the necessary modification, and then it's sent back to update the view. So kind of feedback loop. So we increase, we decrease, let's reset. Good. So that is about use reducers. And then I think we have the DAX pattern, and then Redux. When you learn Redux toolkit and React Redux, you have a pattern that you have to create. When you create an action, you have the slice name, action. So this is our action creator. In Redux, when in Redux, we do have our slices in our stores, so we can follow that pattern that we have slice name slash action name or action creator name. So instead we can say our slice name was reset slash our action creator is reset count. Here also will be decrement slash decrement count. That is kind of pattern most programmers use, but you can stay with what you did earlier. It means this type is going to be sent to our store, so it means you have to update our store with this. We have to update our store with this. So if you see a store with a long action type, it's just a format of using slice name slash the action creator name. So this is the slice. The slice was the increment, and then the action creator, the method or the function which is helping it to achieve such operation is slash that, and then we still have our same operation. So that is all there is to reducers, but there's more when you do learn Redux toolkit and React Redux or raw Redux. So now I think since we have the minimum knowledge and understanding to see how the hooks work, the various hooks, the useState, useEffect, useContext, and use reducers. Now we can follow through calmly with our to-do application, and then when you get stuck, you just pause the video and analyze it a little further. Okay, let's continue. Okay, so after demonstrating the concept of useEffect, useContext, and use reducers, we get down to our main to-do application, and we have dependencies that we're supposed to install: the json-server, React Bootstrap, and as-use. So you need to, as you can see from the package.json, you have as-use, Bootstrap, and json-server installed. You visit the npm page here, as-use, npm as-use, you install. So let me demonstrate this. As-use that's already installed, but so that's how you're going to install the libraries that we need for our extra dependencies we need for our project. So let me create a folder to separate it from the demonstration we did. So this folder is going to have our main to-do application. So to do our parent component, let's name it app to do.js. Then so constant app to do equal to return. Let's set this out. Whether our component renders what we want. Hello. So let's put constant app to do that. So we put it in .js. App to do, and I'm going to run our app to do within our render. So okay, see how to do as no export. Let's see how to do. Sorry for that. Okay, I think I didn't save, so yeah. We do have our hello, so our app is rendered. And mind you, after installing our Bootstrap library, that's a Bootstrap library. You come here, we add Bootstrap. After installing our Bootstrap library, you see that you need to add the CSS import file within our index.js or app.js. So you're supposed to copy this and then paste it in index.js so that Bootstrap will be effective within our application. All right, so let's create our folder structure we'll be needing for this project. So depending on how you want to structure your project, but probably a utilities folder for basic utilities which will be used by various components in the application. I'll create a component, then I'll create a reducers. Okay, so let's see how we go about it. So we've created our to-do application. And then we'll need static data for demonstration. Static data. Okay, so let's fill up or populate our static data. So we say static to-do data. So that will be an object containing objects with an array, then containing extra objects within it. So constant initial to-do data. We have to-dos. So let's give it an ID and a test. I'll use books by rand. So atlas drag and run. She's a very intellectual woman that I do admire and read her books. That's why I'm paying her the homage of using the titles of her books here. So if you don't mind. But I do not agree fully with all her concept of why to live in reality I do like her book export. Let me just add it for here so that I'll call export constant there. So this is our data to do data. Then we'll need our data in our reducers. So to do all the concepts I was explaining in the previous demo, so you can just rewind and check how reducers are used, how contexts are used, and all those stuff. So we say constant reducers is equal to reducer takes on an action. So and then you can use an if else or action dot payload. Oh no, we switch action dot type. Sorry for that. Yes. So now I'm going to just return state. But what you have to bear in mind is reducer is an initial state. We are going to import our static data as the initial state of our to do. So we are going to import it to the reducer. So import, okay. Initial to do data state equals. So our initial state is initial to do data, okay. And then you know that our initial to do data is the data contained here. So I'm just define the concepts in separate folders so that it will become easier to understand. And then we export our reducers So we export our reducers. Then we pass the reducers to the main container. So import to do reducers in our main container. Okay. And import React from React. And we talked about context also, so we're going to create context object here. So export constant reduce. So we pass the reducer state and dispatch to the context object so that the children component can inherit it from the container component, which is up to we go to react.create context. So here we will have reduce context provider, then constant a reducer has a state and a dispatch. So use reducer. The use reducer is going to take our to-do reducers and then the initial state also. Initial to-do data to initialize first and foremost before we start retrieving from an API endpoint or something like that. So our provider has a value prop, so state and dispatch. And then our cloud component, we will call it TodoList.js. So export and TodoList. Come on. Okay, then return import okay, so what you're doing is we pass this cloud component to do list to the parent component up to do here. So let's import it to the list. Okay. So now this child component will inherit the state and dispatch from the context provider as we illustrated in. Okay, so we are now done with set expected introduce reducer the JS. Okay, we are not done, but let's continue. Okay, so what we do now is passing the data state and dispatch to TodoList. We're going to need to retrieve our data in TodoList. So constant state and dispatch is equal to useContext. Then we need to import useContext here. useContext, useContext. Good. So we'll return. Let's name this TodoList. Pardon me for my typing errors. Okay, ignore the error, we'll go and check it. So we are going to render our data in the state. We know that the state was passed from our parent component up to do, and the state it has been initialized with initial to do data, which is this. So we are going to look through this. So it means it will be state.todos. We are mapping through an array. Here will be state.todos.map to do, and I'm using an open and close bracket because it has return both within it. And if you're using curly braces, definitely you're supposed to write return explicitly within it. So if I'm using with open and close bracket, I've not written explicitly, but if I'm using curly braces, I'm supposed to write return explicitly. And I don't want to use that, so I'm using this open and close. Good. So then our list, then assign it a key correct normally requires us to add key to loops. So to do dot text, because you know that our static data has an ID and a text. Okay, so now let's go back to our error. To do reducer line 518. To do reducer line 518. Okay, so default. So that's our data as we follow our reducer pattern. So that is it. Let's continue and make our application a little bit appealing. So now you're going to use Bootstrap. So instead of this, I'm just commenting all this out. So table. Now I don't need to even write it here. We just go to the Bootstrap library and copy the table, then edit it so that our coding will be faster. So go to component, table. This is table. So yeah, we can use this table. Sample code snippet here. Just copy this and paste it here. Then format this. Since this is static data, we will need only one because we will be looping through the rest to populate our table. So this will have our list here. List. Then we'll be adding edit and delete buttons. So let's delete. Good. So this will have our ID. Let's see, as we did for the ordered list using URL and li, we're going to populate it within a table. So within this table row, we're going to say still the same coding. So we can copy this, but let's write it. State.get.map. To okay, so we have our table data. Table data. Oh, sorry, I think I made a mistake. We're supposed to have the rows within it. So every row is supposed to have a table data. Come on, table row, then table data. Yeah. So our table row will now have the key to do the ID, then the table data to do the text. And don't forget we need buttons for edit and delete. So let's for button here, button. So yeah, that's the button. Just paste it here. So format document. Let's make this edit. Make it delete. And then with variant, we have a whole list of colors that we can assign to it. From the bootstrap page, danger primary. So just assigning this danger when you want to delete. So it's supposed to be, as we did previously, said button is not defined. Okay, it's not imported. So let's import it. I think our error should now be dealt with. Good. Sure. So that is okay. Since it's not, it does not align as we wanted exactly. Let me make this ID. Let's make this Todo.text. Okay. So application is filling the whole width of our browser window. I don't want it that way, so I'm going to add bootstrap container to cut off the edges. You can take more on React Bootstrap if you're not familiar with it. Okay, so that will be centered. Container is not imported. Wow. Since today my ID is not helping me with the importation, so yeah, so now it's a little bit centered. So we have this. So that is the application being rendered. So now let's add an input field here where we can add extra data. So to add, let's look for a font component in React Bootstrap. So you can take this and format it. Format document. We didn't need a whole lot of stuff. So we need some data. Let's trimming unnecessary information out. Just to be left with what I will need. Okay, so I think this is enough. Let's see. Okay, form is so the rest has to do with importing the component. Yeah. Okay, I think it's keeping too long. Let's continue. Let's edit this. So the label will be to do application. Okay, label will be add to do. Then the type will be text 80. Then place order enter to do. Okay, submit. I think we can now view and see how application has been rendered. Okay, so we have add to do. Sure. Now the button is sitting too close to the table. Let's add a margin to let's add a margin button, maybe 5 to just push it. Okay, so submit. We just name it add to do. Okay, now so this is the current state of our application. Oh, interesting. Okay, so to add a to do, what we will need to do is this input component, that's the test field. This input component is a test when we do enter the data, it's supposed to be dispatched to our reducer, which will add it to a to do array and then reflect it here. So let's do that. So we'll create we are going to use useState to set the test which will be typed within our form control. So to do test set to do test useState. Initially it's empty. Now when change that is when the user types in data. When the user types in data, the event set to do test will get the event target value and set it to do test for us. So our form has we add an on submit handler to our form. Submit, so let's make it handle submit. Good. Or we can create a handle submit function here. Then we'll provide a default state of the event. So now handle submit. We said what, line 20. Okay. So now let's see. We know that with Redux, when you're using Redux or the Flask architecture, we first have the view which has with dispatches. So let me comment this out. This is just for reference. Where dispatches an action is sent to the store, and the store send this back to the view to be re-rendered. So since we set the state in this handle submit, what we're going to do is we're going to dispatch with our view dispatches an action. We're going to dispatch an action. But don't forget we talked about action creators. Action creators in a while ago. So I'm just going to create our action creator. So constant add to do action payload. Then returns the type add slash the slice name slash action name. Don't forget that. Now payload is the payload which is passed into our action creator. So we dispatch when the submit or the add to do this button is clicked. We'll dispatch the event or target value. So we'll call the action to do, add action to do, then we call to do test. We pass in to do test. Good. That is because the set to do test set the value of what was whatever was entered within this test file into the add to do or into the to do test, which is here. Then you're passing it to our to do application. So it is dispatched, then it's sent to the store. So let's move back to our store. That's so we switch action type to keys. So when it is an action or the keys is add or add slash action to do, what do we need to do? And you're going to probably use immutability to add data. So what we'll do is constant new to do equal to, so id, this is manual approach, then we will use a library to aid us in our id. So our static to do has been numbered 1 2, so this is manual, so just bear with me. id will be 3, tests will be action payload. Good, because the payload is the test. The payload is a test which was entered, which is saved in to do test. Good. So now with our immutability, we will return our state, but state dot to do's will return our state. Good. So our static data is to do's. So we are adding to this array, but I'm not going to use state.todo's. Now we are using immutability. So our state, then our to-dos will be new to do. Now, I don't think so. Let me see. So we are copied into our state.todos. Now we are copied into our state.todos. New to do, exactly. So state.todo is an array. It's being spread, and then we are adding this to it. Exactly. So constant to do state is equal to this, and I'll return to do state. Okay, so let's run this, see whether our to do is updated. Okay, so function head I run. Okay, since there's an error, let's check. Cannot read undefined map. Okay, it means our data which is supposed to be looped has a problem. So let's check the new to do is id. You give it 3 test action of payload. So our to do is let's see our static to do. So we have a to do's array. This is an array. So okay. State.todos, and then new to do, then return our to do state. So we return, no, we don't return the array, we return the whole state. Then with the to do's, our state.todos, slice to do's in to do state. Yeah, I think this will work. fountain head. Okay, so it's added, but you know the ID 3 was minus, so if you do add store the ID, it's same. So let's go about to make our ID randomized. Okay, so I'm going to use the yield, which is kind of a generator function to keep on increasing our values for us without us needing to write the static 1, 2, 3, those kind of stuff. So this is our generator function. If you can read more about this in the MDM pages, I'm just copying it to speed up. I'll add that to our utilities. So ID generator.js. So let's find ID generator. So our index should be greater than our default 2 and less than maybe 1 to maximum of 2000 to this. Yeah. So we import it in our reducers here just to aid us in keeping up of the IDs. So we said it's supposed to be greater than 2. Sure. So create is equal to ID generator. So let's see how it is used. ID generator, then we pass the value to it. So it's supposed to be greater than 2, so 3. Now it returns a map object of, let's see, if you just say iterator, let's see what it outputs. Iterator.next. Okay, it's returning an object of value and done. So we need to access the value. So definitely it's going to be iterator.next. Keep on generating our ID for us. So let's test it out here. Get the fountain head for sure. Philosophy, who needs it? I run. Okay, and we can add a few to it. We the living. Run. Okay, so that is it. Alright, so that's our add to do. Let's get to our functionalities. Delete. Then we come to edit. Edit is a little bit involving. So we go back to our app to-do list. So now when a user clicks delete, all that user want to do is delete or remove a to-do from the list. So I don't click event handler E. So we're going to create another useState. This time rather to handle our delete. So to do this, delete text, set delete text, useState. Okay, so when a user clicks on delete, our set delete text will set our event. Let's see. Actually, we want to pass the whole of to do to the we want to pass the whole of to do to the event handler and extract the ID from it. So I think we can write a dispatch here. So we'll be creating another handler for delete. It's not necessary. So we can just dispatch. We can dispatch our to do here, but we dispatch action. We dispatch an action. So you're supposed to write an action creator here. So constant delete action is equal to sorry for that. Payload where we pass the whole to do object to the action. So type delete action payload. Then we call our delete action here. So we dispatch an action that we pass it to do as a payload to it. So now when this is dispatched, it comes to the reducer. So our new case will be that of our new case that we're supposed to take care of or handle will be this. Yeah. So case delete action. So what we're going to do is first of all we're going to filter the result and see the payload which was passed to this to-do user. So we can say connect. Okay, so constant can say filter result equal to state.reduce dot then use the filter functionality of array because the to-do is an array. Then we say to-do.id is not supposed to retain that particular result. It's equal to action dot payload dot id because here we pass the whole of the to do to our delete action. Then we know that the to do has an ID within it, so we are going to extract the ID and say we don't want to return that particular payload.id as part of the filtered result. So with that down, we can return our state with our to-dos. Now the new result are the filtered result. So that one as well. Okay, and since you are not persisting to any persistent storage, whatever we add is removed. So let's add the living and run. We take this on. It's not returned. It's not returned. But you're not passing it to a data and storage data. So yeah, we still have our old static data, which was 2. So now, yeah, delete is done. Let's go to edit action and see. So with edit, when we click edit, we want the text here to be shown here. That's the first approach. And when the text here is shown, we want the button text to change to edit text. And when edit text is changed here, now when we click edit text, it's supposed to edit the text and reflect it here, and the button is supposed to change back to our to do. So yeah, 3 processes. First, we click edit, the text here is shown in the text field, the button text is changed. So let's do that. Go back to TodoList. So now click event. So with that also, it's on click of just typing out our process or the logic you're going to use, and then we start with it. On click edit btn, show text input field, change text on button to edit text. Edit text, button click, change text to reflect edit, then change button text to add to. Good. Now let's see. We'll have constant edit text set edit text is equal to useState. Good. So now the text edit is now constant button title is now you're supposed to have a boolean variable to take. So constant edit mode okay, edit mode set edit mode is equal to useState false. So by default, the button is hard to do. By default, this button is hard to do. Unless the user clicks this, when the user clicks the edit button, then the boolean will change this to true, and then the text will change. So we'll have button title is edit mode. If it is true, now we'll have edit to do shown on the button, or else we have our default hard to do. Okay, so now this button title will be rendered on this button here, which is static, but now it's going to be dynamic depending on the value of button edit mode. So we have our button title for our to-do list times 73. That's times 73. Okay. So don't click has not been handled. We'll come back to it in a moment just to test our ideas. So by default is this. Now when edit is clicked, when edit is clicked, we call set edit text. Call set edit text. Target value. Good. Set the text of what you want to edit now. Now when it's clicked, definitely we have an action. So let's see. When it is clicked, we set edit test because we said when it is clicked, on click edit button, show test in input field. Show test in input field. So it means the input field is supposed to have a value. The value will be edit test. Yeah, the value will be edit test. Good. Edit test. Hit test on a button to edit test. Okay. So in order to have our value changed, you're supposed to set the boolean to the edit mode to true, that we can have edit reduction on the button. We can have set edit mode to true. So let's take this logical. So unclick edit to do is shown, but our test is not shown. The test here is supposed to show in the input field. Let's see. Set edit test of e.target.value, which sets the value in edit test. Yeah, and edit test is set as the value for our form control. Yeah, it's supposed to work. Let's refresh and see. Okay. I think something is not right. Okay. I'll click edit test. Let's console log it. Let's console log it and see what we do have. e.target.value. Okay, so let's see why our test is not showing how to do test field here. Console login to see. Okay, it shows blank. Okay, let's check our code. When we click the edit button, oh sorry, we are not responding to any event, we just getting out to the test thing. So yeah, set edit to do test. This also to do, yeah. I think this will work. Okay, we have it here. We are showing object. Okay, set edit to do the test object. Let's see. Set edit, yeah. So it's shown here. All right. Let's now resolve that. We can move on, continue the logic. So I can take this one out. Set edit test to do the test, set edit mode is true. Then the form control you're using edit test. But since set to do tests is our function controlling our form input, its value is supposed to handle our input control. So okay, yeah, sorry for delaying. I was charging my laptop. we'll okay, we'll use our to-do test to continue to handle our input test. Yeah, so set to do will handle the test for our input. So that's the function which is controlling our input effort. Do the test. Let's test this out and see. Okay, good. So now when this is done, now we will need to click this edit to do button to perform our operation for us. But we know that is within the form handle submits. So with form handle submits on edit button task, the change text to reflect edited data and change button to add to do. So it means you're supposed to write our functionality here. So let's complete our thing creator. Oh, let me just copy this. Delete action creator is the same as delete action. So we take a payload, but it's going to be edit / edit action, and then our payload is definitely assuming this is what we want to edit. On the new value here, it's not the value of edit, but rather the value set by this function set to do. The value set by set to do, and its value is to do this. It means you're supposed to copy to do this into our new payload. So it means here will be our payload. Will have text. You're copying to do test. We'll copy to do test into our payload. Yeah, definitely that's how it's supposed to work. Let's come to so if edit mode. Which means if true, we are performing operations corresponding to edit, because this edit mode is a Boolean variable. So if it is true, it means our button is edit mode, edit to do. If it is false, it means we are adding to do. So we place this in the else. Then when you are done, we can clear our test code. And we are done, we can clear our test code. So okay, so if edit mode, then what we do is we will dispatch our edit action with okay. We will dispatch our edit action by passing our test, which was edit test, because the value will be set. We will pass edit test in our to do action, but it will be spread here because the to do test will be changed in the input test field here. We're going to okay, that has been corrected. Supposed to go. I think I'm supposed to save here to reflect it. Okay. So when I do click this, now this button has been changed to edit to do. When I click end that, now this input field is controlled by set to do test. So set to do test. By your pass this set to do test set editors contains the original data, but this set to do test has been altered. So we copy the to do test, we spread it into the existing editors. So that will be our new value, and we dispatch it. When dispatch, we need to set edit mode back to false. We need to set edit mode back to false. And we need to clear the content of our set editors also. Okay, good. So let's go back to our reducers. Let's see the logic we'll be implementing. So case, that will be our last case. Case, copy the action. Good. Now, what we are going to do is we're going to use slice functionality on an array, because that's an array to in a manner that it doesn't actually mutate the array, but as you can see, it creates a shallow copy of it. So we're going to use slice array.slice to perform our edit immutability operation. So let's see. Assuming so this is our already existing data. And if I want to change the test here to run and not, first of all, this is stored in an array. So I need to make a copy of the existing array. So let's see. Let's demonstrate this here manually before we get to our logic. Assuming I want to edit camel. Good. Or insert a value between bison and camel. Let's see. I can create a shallow copy of between 0 and 2. So let's try that one out. So I can take ant and bison. Okay. What of between 2 and animal.length? So that will be from camel. So between 2 and animal.length, we have camel to elephant. If I want to assume, insert dog between them, I could say constant new animals will be equal to. Now what I could do is I could spread between animals. I should spread between animals from 0 to 2. Then insert the dog here. Then also spread animals.slice from 2 to animals.length. And with that, I didn't mutate the array, but I just created a shallow copy of it. So let's see. So we have ant, bison, dog, camel, dog, elephant. So this is the exact logic we are going to use in editing or updating our to do. So we'll copy the portion of the array. We'll first find the index of the value we want to edit. Then we'll copy the part of the array which begins and ends at the part we want to edit. We'll edit our value and then copy the remaining of our array back into it. So that is for showcasing what we actually wanted to do. So here to do a thing, we'll have, let's say, constant updated to do will be equal to since this value was our payload, the payload that was the edit test was mutated in a, not actually mutated, a new value was copied into the test portion of it, the test portion of the payload. Let's see edit to do. Edit to do. Okay, if I'm editing, let me see, set edit test. Okay, set edit test. I'm actually going to, I need to give it the whole to do object because I'm modifying it test portion here, tests portion as to do test. So it means I have to pass the whole to do portion to it. This updated to do will be action.payload in the sense that the payload, which is to do and its portion test, has been modified when we type an extra name into the test field containing the existing data. I have to retrieve it in the same manner as action.payload being spread. And then I could say constant index, the index that I'm modifying could be stated to do so that we find the index. Yeah. To do.id is equal to payload.id exactly. And now constant updated to do should be like exact logic we use here. We copy the part or the portion of the array out to the index we want to edit. So that will be state.slice way to do slice. Then from index 0 up to the updated to do index where we actually want to edit it to do. And then the alpha updated to do we paste there. And now copy the remaining portion of the array. So we'll have state.to-do slice updated to the index plus 1. Then we return our states. Our state. Then to do portion with updated to this array. Okay, let's test that one also out. So this is at last track. I click by I am run. Now I am run the net. I knew this new value has been spread. This new value, that is the to-do test, has been spread into this payload. And that payload has been dispatched to our reducer here. Then we find the index of that particular ID that we wanted to edit. So good. You have by I run the nuts. Good. So that is it for the edit. Sorry. That is it for the edit. Now we will need to, so let me explain it to do once more. If I do click this edit, the test here is shown here in the input test field. Now our button has been changed to edit to do. So it's set to do test was the original function which was controlling the to do test, the input test field value. Set it test is shown within the input test field, and whatever we alter it becomes a new information. So this change event responds to the input by the user, and then it's copied to the payload of the edit to do action creator here. So the payload takes a to do object, but a text portion is being altered because the user entered extra additional data because the text has been altered. Then it is passed to, or it is dispatched to our reducer, and our reducer retrieves the new data. It finds the index of that particular value, and then it copies the array up to the index of that particular value to be edited. It updates the value, and then it appends the remaining value of the array back to it and returns it as our old array. So that's it for our to do. So basically that's the whole of the logic that we needed. So we can add, we can delete, then we can edit. I think that is all. But let's try to persist it to a state. Let's see how it's going to behave also. So with that, we said we needed two libraries, as use and then json-server. So I think you've installed that already. So let's see with so since you're going to persist it to a store, now this static data will be moved into our json server. So let's see, json server. Let's see how that works. Then we implement it. I think it takes a dash. Okay, so install json server, and then we create a db.json, so it could be anything. You create an object of an array in this format, then you start your json server. So let's see, db.json. Okay, so I'll create a db.json here, db.json. So that we've created our db.json, but let's move into a folder to keep our project. So let's create backend db.json. Now you can have, so this is how our JSON is supposed to be structured. We go to our static to do, and let me copy this db.json. You can see that it will be underlined quickly because this is JSON, not JavaScript object. So it's supposed to be double columns. So we can add, let's add another one to it to differentiate it from our static data so that you could see it better. Try by default, let me add one more. Okay. By default, we have 4 values or objects within our array. So let's see. So start the JSON server with JSON server db wash db.json. Let me open another part of the terminal post connect directly to src slash to do slash back, then copy this here. So by default, it takes localhost 3000. It means we're supposed to terminate our React application and let it our backend have the upper hand now. So this localhost 3000 URL will be for our JSON server. Yeah. So our resources is to do the data here. Yeah, we do have it. Let's restart and start our React application. I think it's going to take 3001. So whilst we wait for it, let's open as use and see how our users will work. As this, as use, we've installed as use examples. You're going to use, since you're going to perform CRUD operations, you're going to use its API of get, delete, post, and patch. Okay. So now let's see, we have our backend all set up here. We have to link it to our application. So now our reducers was initialized by our initial Todo application. And now since you are consuming data from a backend application, our backend API, let's create probably a component which can return our information for us, our backend data for us. And since you're using React 16, it can return an array, not only component. So let's name it, let's say use API.js. Statement, because when I'm done, I'm going to recommend good React books that I use to come about with this video and extra further information on how to further your React programming skills. Okay, so still by the old rendered data, because our new data is 4, but the old rendered initial data is 2. So we'll change that in a moment. So constant use API is endpoint, and then let's say we are going to use useEffect. We've already talked about it. Import React from React. Let's data set data. Use state by default. We don't have anything of our data. Use effect. So I can initialize this with then I'm going to return data. The function maybe get data. Async, because we are going to use async await. Get endpoint. Okay, the value our URL will be passed to the API. I want to create this component so that it can be used by most components without having to always use as usual get in different components. Then we set the data using its method handler, set data response data written by as use. Then we can get data. Yeah. So here's what use API, and we get it in, let's see, our component here. Yeah. Okay. So now what we do have is we want this component to return our data from our DB, which is this. So what we will do now is within our TodoList reducers, our data will no more be initialized by initial to do data. So we'll give that a blank array. So now we cannot render anything in this table here, as you can see. Yeah. Okay, I think it has been initialized within here, initial to do data. So in a moment when we change this, we'll have an error. Don't worry about that. If we change it to a blank array, we cannot map through our values and we'll have an error. Yeah, we do have an error, cannot read map. So what we can do is, in our to-do list, we'll make it optional by using the question mark, so that when you do have any array, if you don't have any content within an array, you can still handle the errors. Yeah. Okay, so we've handled our errors. We have nothing to render here. So what we do is we're going to initialize our reducers with the data we retrieve from our backend, which is this data from to-dos. So this is the URL. We'll copy the URL and let's say HTTP endpoints. Initialize to this, of course, and maybe save to do, then call use API component which retains the data. We pass HTTP endpoint to it. Okay, good. Now our to-dos, this is our save to-dos. Now we'll create an action handler here, and we get this. Return a type of get slash payload. So definitely what you're going to do is this get to dos will be dispatched. It's supposed to be dispatched, but in order for it to be dispatched, we're supposed to call our useEffect handler also here. So the component is mounted and we dispatch our get to do. It is a payload that will be saved to do, will be sent to it. Then we've already talked about useEffect, why after calling it within an array, also initialize this object within it to avoid continuous refetching of our data until when it is changed, this refresh taken by. If it's still static, it remains as it is to conserve resources. So that is it. And we move to to-do reducers. So now we do not need this anymore. We can comment this out, and then we just get our data from payload. The payload that will be coming. So this new to-do is supposed to be created rather here. We don't need to do this. So let's see about that. So when the data is dispatched and initialized, we can get to those. So okay. Yes, that I say. So nothing has been initialized. Wow. Let me console log save to here. See if in this you don't have data. Oh yeah, we do have our data being returned, but why is it not being rendered? We do have our data being returned. So let me see. So okay, then supposed to create this within our reducers here. So I'll give this to this, then populate our state with our action.payload when it is initialized. Yeah. So that is it. We are now connected to our backend because the data is now retrieved from get to those, which is received from our HTTP endpoint. So now when we do click delete, we are still using our reducers to perform the manipulation of just filter. Now we want to persist it. So we make a delete operation. It is sent to our backend to actually delete the data. When we edit, likewise, also the same. So we are going to use our Asus library, and now let's see. I think we installed Asus. Go back to TodoList. Now, when you check the Asus library online, also with npm, we'll have its request method alias is .get post put patch and delete. So let's handle our delete. So since it's an async operation, we are going to use async await. Okay, so whilst we dispatch delete, we also be performing a persistent delete operation from our database. So await SQL's delete. Then we'll have our HTTP endpoint. Endpoint slash. Then you're going to delete a particular ID from the to-do. So we have todo.id. Because with delete, you have the URL and other configurations. Sure. So HTTP endpoint slash todo.id. Let's test that one out. With the living is deleted. Let's check our backend and see if it is. Yeah, it's deleted. With the living is deleted. So it means we don't have with the living anymore. Our data has been persisted. Let's add to the database also. Let's see. Oh, we have as_post. So we're going to use async await. Supposed to add async to the method handler. Await. Kind of feel a little bit code here. Will be done in no time. As usePost. So we have the HTTP endpoint. Then our new data. So we have our new data here. So as usePost takes the URL endpoint and the data, the URL endpoint and the data. So what we're going to do is our new to do. We're going to create our new to do here rather than create it in the reducers. So we're going to click this, comment this out, comment the generator and the iterator functions. Then copy this whole code. Or we can just leave it out and let's just type it out here. So constant to do we equal to, you know how to do is supposed to have an ID and a text. But since we've commented out this, our action.payload will be a whole to-do object coming to be added to the to-dos. So what we'll have here is this is the to-do object. We're going to use, instead of using our static generator function, we're going to use a random generator function that is called UUID. So that's also the last library we're going to use for randomized ID generator. Okay, let's install that. I think initially I really want to use it, but I'll make our code simpler. So whilst installing, let's see, import v4. Let's copy this. Import v4. Let's place it here. Then let's see how does the library say. You can just use it straightforward as UUID v4. Okay, so then our ID here will be UUID v4. Now test is to do test. So this is our to-do object, which is passed as data to our HTTP endpoint post. Then our new to-do here, we're going to initially in our to-dos reducers, we're creating our new to-do here, getting the action.payload because we're passing only the test. We're passing to-do test here, but this time, since we've commented out, we've commented this line out here, it means we are getting straight for the action.payload, the whole object. So now the whole object will rather be passed to our to-do action. And that is all. Let's compile. Okay. Let's run our application and see. Okay. So let's say replace run. Let's add to do. That is added. Let's say for a new intellectual run. We add. That is also added. So we can check our endpoint also and see. Alright, that is it. We can also delete. It's gone. We check our endpoint. It's deleted. So the last thing left is edit. So with edits, edits a patch operation. Edits a patch operation. Now we can use put or patch, but they both updates. But patch updates a small portion of it. Put update, I think almost the whole portion of the data. Yeah, there are few differences. You can cross-check more on it in REST APIs and their verbs, what they entail and what they do. So let's complete the last of our application. That will be Azure.patch here. Azure.patch our HTTP endpoint, and then slash to-do.id. Then we'll patch it. We are not going to change the ID, we are going to change the test. To test. I'm going to patch it. And that is all. But where is zero coming from? To do in to-do list. Okay, now this is here exactly. Okay, so we have edit test. Edit test has to set the test, so we can get the whole object and get the test, the ID from it. So let's see edit test. Edit test is this. We will need the whole object. We need the whole object. Oh, wow, interesting. Let's see. here we access the ID from the to-do, but this time we don't have the objects. Set edit test. Let me see what set edit test. So set edit test. Okay, set edit test is the whole to-do object. So it means we can get edit test dot id. We can get edit test dot id from it and update it with the to-do test. So let's edit this and copy. Let's see. Voila, it's reflected. Let's check our backend. Yeah, well, that is for our application. Let's see. Romantic manifesto. I run to do edit. I run then. So yeah, done. So that is all, but I would like to show a few more. No, not actually part of the coding, but I'm trying to probably, let's say, give thanks and regards to the books that I read through to make this video possible. So the first book was I think Greg Lim React Hooks. Yeah, I think React Hooks. So exactly this book. I would recommend it to. Actually, I'm not being paid for making these recommendations, but I do like it a lot because it gave me all the knowledge and information to showcase this video. That's Greg Lim, and then Adam Budok. Yeah, Adam Budok React books has aided me a lot in understanding much our React. So Adam Budok's React books, yeah, React and React Native, exactly this book. So I would also recommend these books, Adam Budok, React and React. And last but not the least, I think the first book I read to have the gist and understanding of what React entails was by Robin Week. Yeah, Robin Week. And he also has a blog post. I do follow him both in Stack, not probably Stack Overflow, in GitHub. And yeah, so yeah, exactly. The Road to React by Robin Week. Yeah, exactly. So this book gave me the first comprehensive understanding about React.js, and the introduction was perfect. And I recommend it to beginners of React. It uses mostly class components for class component and ESs for the introduction. Then he'll walk you through to build I think a Hacker News application using React and its lifecycle methods. Actually, I've not been paid for that, but I want to show appreciation of what they've done because of their insights into helping us fellow developers to have an easy pathway and understanding for the new frameworks at hand. I'd like to give them bigs up and showcase their books to new developers who will be up and coming or who like to have a quick glance and understanding on React. So these are the books I read. There are further, I think I've also read books by Nate Murray. Yeah, Nate Murray React. Nate Murray React books. Yeah. He also does quite good comprehensive understanding on React. So Nate Murray exactly. So yeah. So as you can see, There are a whole lot of books on React that I've read, and I'm still reading to better myself. The books are many, but these are the ones I read, and I think I can recommend it to you. And if you also have other suggestions and good books, you can also recommend it to me down below in the comment section. Thanks also. So artists, this is to me trying to make your books popular to other developers or upcoming developers, because after reading your books and having an understanding of React, I've been able to get a gist on what React is about, and I'm still improving my skill set. So thanks everyone. We'll meet again another time.